first question to you was, you've been on some pretty major stages. What are some of the most major stages you've been on, and to what extent do you think you ever dreamt of this as a child? Like, is any of this a result of what you think was some kind of visualization of where you could be?
Gotcha. So did I manifest this in a wonderful way as a child? I don't think I ever thought as a young child where I this music could have possibly taken me initially. I grew up in a family that weren't in the music industry, so that visualization never really existed. I just kind of went with the flow. I knew this was something that was really special and magical and made me feel good and made other people feel good, sharing my talent. And then I just kind of let it lead. I allowed the music to lead me where I needed to be, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. I think what I love about what you're saying is that not every fantastic end result has to be a result of actual visualization, that sometimes you're aware of the magic, and the magic is aligned with who you are. And when that alignment occurs, it creates a kind of motivation that allows you to keep going. Uh,
Absolutely.
could you tell us about some of the most major stages you've been on and what that felt like?
Sure. Wow. I mean, I would probably, there's so many that I'm so honored to have been able to grace, including events, presidential events. But I would say, well, right here in New York City, because I am born and raised in New York, I had the opportunity to perform on the big Stern Auditorium, Carnegie Hall, with the New York Pops Orchestra. That was a major, major accomplishment as a young girl growing up in Bronx and Brooklyn, and to see myself on that stage. That was the first time performing on that stage as a principal, right? I performed on that stage in the children's choir when I was, I think, 13 years old, but that entire experience was very blurry to me because it was so long ago. But to be able to perform as a soloist with the symphony was absolutely, blowing my mind in so many different ways.
Well, so before that symphony, and
Yes.
before your presentations, before your singing in general, do you ever not feel nervous?
So I think I started not feeling nervous as I got older, right? So there was always some level of nerves that would go through my body, and in a good way. It always make me do better, because obviously when you're performing in these on these major stages and venues, the stakes are higher, right? Than versus performing, at your local church.
Right.
So lots of eyes are on you. And so, yeah, I think now it's not really nerves, but anxiousness of really wanting to connect to the audience members and wanting to do a great performance, versus, oh my God, I hope I don't mess up type thing. I kind of been doing this long enough that I'm like, we're good. Like, I'm just singing songs that are like I'm living in, and we're gonna be good. It's just a matter of making sure that it comes off the way I want it to come off, and I talk to the audience too, usually when I'm performing. So making sure I don't say any crazy joke that like offends anybody, so it's all those things that you're taking into mind before you perform. And Carnegie Hall was major for me. I've also sung at the Madison Square Garden a few times, singing the national anthem. That was televised, so that was very major for me. Kennedy Center, I performed at the Kennedy Center. for the Children's Defense Fund, where I got a chance to be on the same stage with the great Jesse Norman, when
Oh,
we all were soloists for that performance, but at the very end we all sang together, and I just remember like her grabbing my hand so strong and just being so supportive, as like a fellow, you know, black opera singer, kind of almost passing her baton on to me. So that was really major for me. And oh my goodness,
yeah.
I'm
One of the
trying to
things
think. Lincoln Center. I mean, yeah, there's and Vienna Kammer Opera in Austria. So I've had some major opportunities to perform not just here but also internationally, and I performed for President Obama for his inaugural ball. So that was pretty major for me to see someone that looked like me becoming the president of the United States.
Well, it's such a beautiful story, I think, of hope and possibility. And I think when you talk about those initial nerves, I often want to remind people, Billie Jean King's book, Pressure is a Privilege, that for stars and people who are moving into their greatness, having stress can actually be helpful as it begins to help you organize yourself. But as you said, as you begin to inhabit those songs and you feel like you're less self conscious, often the brain will then cooperate with you because you've let go of whatever that ego element is and you're just one with whoever the audience is. But
Yes.
I'm curious about your career and your trajectory. When you said what you were saying, I was like, what? Wait a minute, jazz, opera, like R&B, like what? I think Berry Gordy was referred to as the most versatile singer of our time. And I'm curious, what made you not define yourself by one genre? And what do you think contributes to that versatility in your performing abilities?
Interesting, because it's a benefit, and then it is a it's it's a not so beneficial sometimes, because when you are versatile in so many different genres, um, some people will look at it as, wow, that's awesome, like Barry Gordy does. And then other people were like, oh, you need to pick a lane.
Right.
You're too confused. You obviously don't know what you really want to do. And, versatility, I almost feel like it is a genre on its own, right? But when you are doing an album and going into trying to pitch your music to radio stations, or getting a Grammy nomination, it's all based on which genre are you boxing your art in. And so that can be very, how can we say, not so inviting in one way, because you want to be able to live in your space fully. But if you have to cut pieces of yourself and put them in boxes, right, then you're not really fully in your space.
Absolutely, because when I listen to what you're saying, I think, uh, so I happen to think that you are a leader, and one of the things that I think makes me hypothesize this is that I think in the age of AI, it would be much more difficult to copy you than someone in one genre. Because I think if I were an AI programmer, I would be like, oh, let's copy Nikinji, the opera singer. It's like, no, wait a minute, wait. She also does jazz. Like, oh, okay, so I got to do like a whole jazz thing. It would be very difficult to copy you. So I think that,
Yes, that's great. I love it. Like, if you really want to you can't copy me. Like,
right,
it's too much work.
right. And it reminds me of one of my favorite definitions of leadership, which is becoming a leader is synonymous with becoming yourself. It's precisely that easy, but also that difficult. And I wonder that for someone like you who's had a long and successful career, what keeps you motivated? Like what makes you get up every day? I mean, don't you, whenever I think about people on tour or I think about people showing up every day to perform, what do you think is the most fundamental thing that keeps you motivated on a day-to-day basis?
On a day-to-day basis, wow, there's so many factors on what keeps me motivated. One would be motherhood. I have an amazing little girl, 10 years old, Jazar Martina, who I'm so proud of. And just being able to wake up in the morning and seeing her glowing face and seeing the world through her eyes is so inspiring because as an adult have lived those years and quite honestly can't remember what I did in those young youthful years. I It's just fascinating to see and to be able to guide her. So I see that she watches me a lot, and she's kind of going into this space of entertainment on her own. I feel that she's so smart. She can do so many different things. She's literally a triple threat, dances, sings, acts, but she's also really smart when it comes to robotics and mathematics. And I feel like she can do anything. But because she sees what I do and she sees how happy it makes me, it makes her happy and wants to do the same thing so that she can accomplish the the enlightenment and the happiness that she sees that I have every day, right? And it's not like I'm trying to push her towards it, but it's just from seeing and experiencing that through my experience. And I that's one thing that makes me wake up every day, like knowing that I have this little girl that looks up to me as her hero, and everything that I do is building something that inspires and mentors her, right? And kind of creating that legacy, like passing on that legacy to the next generation of letting them know that like you can do anything you possibly want to do as long as you put your mind and your passion behind it, right? And it takes a lot of work.
Yeah, I bet. I mean, as I listen to you, I think you're a living example of the science of intrinsic motivation. Because if you look at what intrinsically motivates people, it's three factors. It's autonomy, which is sort of like doing your own thing, which you clearly are doing. You know, the second is competence, and you're extremely good at what you do. And the third is social relations. It sounds like you feed off of positive relationships and they feed off of you. And with this back and forth, those three factors, which come under the heading of self determination theory, are what cause this kind of intrinsic motivation to exist. When you're teaching her, I wonder, I mean, have you ever experienced a rejection that's been disappointing? Or has anyone ever said no? And have you ever reached a point where you've been like, well, how do I deal with this? You seem like a pretty sort of growth mindset oriented, upbeat, on to the next thing person. But
I can be very convincing, but I have received many no's in the past. And, interesting enough, I try to maneuver around the no's. Like, okay, so, like, for example, this is a perfect example. This morning, I had a meeting with my TV producing partner. We've been pitching a show called Black Butterfly, a television show that I created, and it's inspired by my life and my mother's life. And I've co-written it with this great writer, Mary McCullum. And this was a show that was kind of built out of the COVID days when like no one knew what they were doing, and everything was shut down, but also it was very difficult to pitch during that time because everything was shut down, right?
yeah,
And so we're talking about like 2021, 22 time. And, the show, there was interest in the show from Sony Television. And so for about 6 to 9 months, we're working with Sony TV, making adjustments according to their likings with the script. Everyone's going to have their opinion
yeah,
as to how you should start it. I'm not really thinking that the beginning is engaging enough, things like that. Sure, no
yeah,
problem, we will change that. What else do you need?
right.
And then right when we thought we were at this point of like getting it greenlit, then there was change in the executive structure, right? So once when people start passing and new people, new blood come in, they want to bring their own projects. And so then we were past. And there's been a lot of, oh wow, we really love this show, but we're already working on projects. Or so there, it wasn't like they were passing. Some of these networks weren't passing because they thought the script was crap or they didn't like it. They liked it, but they just didn't have the bandwidth for it. So right when my partner was like, we did it, we gave it our all, and so now we're going to move on to other projects. And I'm like, no, 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 no. Well, that was back in like 21, 22. We're in 25 now. And still to this day, there's nothing on television that is anything like this show. So why don't we go back? And you never know what has changed in the past couple of years. Maybe those projects that they were working on is no longer happening. Let's go back and do this. And this is a woman that's been in the business for 25 years, and she was literally about to like close the door on it. And then I had to have this conversation with her saying, let's go back and like revisit this. And so she's like, okay, let's do it. Right.
Yeah, no,
So you just have to just like, you know what? I know they said no at that time, but now there could be a different time. Like their
yeah,
bandwidth may be different now. So like I don't, when someone says no, that may be like, okay, temporarily no.
right, yeah.
Can I revisit? Can we have this conversation in 6 months, 9 months, in a year? And maybe you might be in a different mindset at that time. So obviously, there are times when it's just like, it's an absolute pass. We're not going to do this. And so you have to think about that, and you have to think, okay, why did they say no? What is it about this project that wasn't engaging enough for them? What can I make to change that, to then maybe represent this package to them in a year and say, by the way, the things that you said, which were constructive, we actually took into consideration. And here is a new script for you. Let us know what you think about that now.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, I think what I'm hearing is again a really strong example of growth mindset, where what you're saying is, yeah, you with the first no, I hear you, but I'm going to course correct, get the feedback, integrate the feedback, and keep moving. And the thing that's going to allow me to keep moving is my passion and investment in what this project is. And I was struck by two things, and which I'd love you to comment on. One is that you've been on so many major stages. I think for most people this would be an amazing career, and but I've heard you say, and in different things that I've read, that you're ready for the big time, that you're ready for the big stage. And I know that you have a single out called Goosebumps. I wonder if you could speak a little bit to what does the transition from being already where you are mean? Like, what are the changes in you as a person to go from good to great or excellent to great? And what are the changes? And for you, how does Goosebumps represent anything about that? It's a beautiful song, by the way. I love it.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, it's interesting because I had released Goosebump Moment much earlier than I had planned. And it was because I had an opportunity to perform it for China TV for their celebration of Chinese New Year last year. And they did not want me to do any cover songs. They wanted me to do my original music. And so, with the idea of knowing that I'd have this platform of performing for like several millions of watchers for this event, I took it upon myself to like rush this, like, okay, let's get it out. And then we put it out, so then when people heard me sing the song, they would then indeed want to go and look it up and then listen to it and then stream it. And with that said, I then got a publicist to get it to lots of playlists and get reviews, and we got lots of love, like more international love than I had expected, from Mexico, from France, Germany. So we got a lot of new listeners that were just like, who is this Nikenji? Right. So it definitely opened the doors to a a community of music lovers that didn't know anything about me, but then heard this song and was really intrigued by it. Then the idea was that the song was going to be coming from an upcoming album. I was working on an album called Center Stage. And Center Stage was a pop R&B album. And as we all know, our music industry is very, very saturated with lots of pop and R&B artists, many independent artists, many artists that are with major labels. We call it the machine.
Right.
And so what I had to rethink, and this is something that, as an artist, you think, okay, this route may be a little more difficult to go, because there's a lot of traffic in that.
Right.
Right. And then there's also a lot of money that you have to put into going into the studio, producing the album. And then once you've already paid that money, if you don't have a major with you, once you pay that money, then you have to pay money for marketing. And like, there's no point of having a great album that is only being listened to in the privacy of your shower if you don't have money to market it. So what I did is, because I'm performing around New York and outside of New York, doing a lot of jazz music, because I love jazz, and I grew up on that music along with Motown music. I grew up with a lot of different styles of music. My parents were very eclectic as to what they wanted to listen to. And as you saw me at the jazz club at the Aman Hotel, and I'm singing at Minton's, and I'm singing at Forsano and the Django, and all the wonderful spots in New York City where people come to listen to jazz, I thought, what am I doing? Why don't I put out an album that is centered around the music that I'm actually singing on a monthly basis in New York City? And people are going to come to hear me sing this music. And now they can actually go and hear that music online, right? Like, oh my God, I love Nikenji singing Too Darn Hot. Ooh, I wish I could get and hear her sing that on Spotify. Well, guess what? Now you will, because I got this opportunity to headline the Ella Fitzgerald Festival in Virginia in April 11th. And and what's so special about this performance is that it is a performance for the community. So it's part of their series where all the tickets are $10 to make it affordable for everyone to be able to see a concert at the Ferguson Center for the Arts. And they're bringing me in with my full band, and we're performing this concert for them and giving homage to Ella Fitzgerald, Billie Holiday. But what I thought, it was like, why don't I make a live album from that concert? And so then you really get the taste of how I perform live versus in the studio. I'm going to be singing songs from like Minnie the Moocher, so you get the audience like participating with Heidi Heidi Ho, and I'll be singing the standards like Too Darn Hot and Come Rain Come Shine, but also some big torch songs and Swonderful, and then I'm also going to do Goosebump Moment, but with the band, because Goosebump Moment, when it's done acoustically with a live band, has that jazz Latin flavor. So now I'm putting Goosebump Moment as my original song on this jazz album, along with another original song. But then we're going to pay homage to all these great artists, from Billie Holiday, Nat King Cole, Natalie Cole, Billy, and I'm super excited about it. So now that is the album that's coming out in the summer from that concert. It's going to be a live album.
Well, I think you're a great example of someone who has an agile mindset. And I think that in this day and age, what I hope that people will take away from this is that stardom is not a static thing. And that to move toward the star that you are requires being agile and requires your being in a state of mind that allows you to adapt the way that you did.